I think I would say that nobody is going to sell like you. It's probably why you built the brand. So just get right with it. There is not another version of you out there, so stop trying to make it that way. Also, this goes back to this idea that the point isn't that I know the answers. The point is that I build the room. And if you can figure out those core values, and if you can figure out the value proposition, and those are in alignment with the salespeople you're hiring, then not only are you growing, because their network is going to grow and they're going to bring in new things and new opportunity, but it then has given me space to elevate the style of selling I do. So I still sell, but now I'm at an executive sponsorship level. Now I'm speaking at something and branding the company and meeting somebody that might become a client. So it's just a different kind of selling. And in order to do that really well, you've got to let some of this stuff go. And at some point, it probably doesn't motivate you the same way it used to. So get somebody in that seat that is pumped to be in that world, because it's going to add energy to the entire team versus it just being a to-do.
Welcome back in person right now. Drew and I are.
What?
If you're not watching on YouTube and you're just listening, Drew is standing right next to me. Welcome back to Whiskey is for Closers. See, most founders we talk to are running from sales. However, our next guest, she leaned in. Hillary Spreizer built the Latitude Group by basically becoming the anti-recruiter recruiter. You know, the kind who actually tells you the truth instead of promising you unicorns. We're talking a 90% plus retention rate that makes me feel really bad about our own recruitment process. Hillary, welcome to the show. Before we dig in, I gotta ask, is it wine that you're drinking? Because you knew this episode was gonna be kind of spicy, or is this just a typical late Thursday afternoon where you're drinking at work?
Well, I'm very excited to be here. Thank you. This is a typical Thursday afternoon drinking at work. And because I am from South Dakota, where our craft cocktails are just the name of the drinks, it is a tequila and soda with an orange slice today.
Love it.
Nice.
I love it.
So no fancy names. You just call it what it is. Tequila and soda.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I've been told it can't be a craft cocktail if the name are the ingredients. So the more you know.
Well, but
That's
you had
hilarious.
a twist of something in there too.
Yeah,
That was kind of fancy. So
Really
is that
classy.
an orange or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I think the
All
actual
right.
craft cocktail name for that is ranch water, isn't it?
Oh, great.
think it
Then
is.
I'm having a ranch
There
water.
you go.
If you were in South Dakota, that would be totally appropriate because there's a few ranches there, right? Yeah.
They'd look at you
100%.
though. They'd be like, whatever. They'd be like, you have spent too much time in a big city. Mhm.
Oh, it's so good. All right. Steve, you want to go next?
Sure. So this is a little bit sad, but also exciting. I just poured the last of the sexy motor oil from last
Too
year.
bad.
But this is a very special bottle of whiskey. I can't call it bourbon because it's blended, but it's a collaboration between Breckenridge Distillery, where my son works, my youngest son, Cody, and Breckenridge Brewery. And so Breckenridge Distillery, they make their bourbon whiskey in their barrels, and then they send them over to the brewery, and then they age one of their beers in those barrels. And then when that beer is ready, then they send the barrels back to the distillery and they age the whiskey again in the barrels that have had both whiskey and beer in it. So hence the crazy name Sexy Motor Oil. It is one of my favorite whiskeys of all time, and this is my last glass, but I'm picking up more in Colorado next week.
I love it.
It makes me think of my son, Cody. We have made many memories over this bottle, and man, I'm grateful for it. I love that guy. So that's what I'm drinking today.
Well, Drew started a couple of rounds before I even got here, so why don't you share with
I might be a couple of glasses in just to grease the skids a little bit. But here's all I would say, Hillary. Whenever you hear Steve talk about the fact that he's brought in Sexy Motor Oil on a conversation, it's going to be a really good conversation.
Totally.
Because that is kind of like the highlight. So I love that. Now for me, today I'm having Buffalo Trace, okay? And I'm having Buffalo Trace in our Altezza, Whiskey is for Closers specialized glass. So
Nice.
as is Steve. So today that is what I'm having. I'm having Buffalo Trace. I'm a big fan. I like their different options that they provide for us. So I'm going to be enjoying a little bit of Buffalo Trace today.
And
Solid
I
choice.
am driving Drew and I to Atlanta after this. So I am having a gin and tonic, which is my go-to. Not bourbon, because I want to be able to drive. And,
I love that logic. I love that.
right?
That's right,
It's
because
good, isn't
gin
it?
is not alcoholic
And-
at all.
Doesn't count.
Totally.
That's why I'm drinking
It does
tequila.
not hit me. It does
No,
not hit
I
me
get
the
it.
same way. And this is in a Leaper's Fork glass at the King Snake House.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Leaple's
That's
Fork.
right.
That's another
That's right,
favorite.
Yeah. So as we start, cheers.
Cheers, everybody.
Yes.
Let's go.
Hey, we can actually clink.
Cheers.
Boom.
Boom. Love it. Thanks for participating in that with us, Hillary. That's awesome. So, Hillary, let's kick it off. Let's start with the story. Like, walk us back to the beginning and tell us what made you jump into the wonderful world of IT recruiting.
The wonderful
Yeah,
world.
the world that no one goes to school for, ever. So the Latitude Group has been around for 24 years. I was with the company 10 years before buying it from the founder 5 years ago in January. Before that, I had been with another staffing agency. I have no idea, honestly, why they hired me. I was wildly underqualified, but they did, which was great for me because it was the recession. So Latitude, obviously my ownership style, leadership style was really influenced by the 10 years I had been with the company before buying it. Then COVID happens. We lose half of our consultants in a day. We sent everybody home. Comically, I think we said for like a week, as if any of us had ever sent anyone home for a health crisis, but said it with a lot of confidence, I'm sure. And the founder and I had decided to freeze our pay to keep the team, not knowing really what was on the other side. I said I would do that, but wanted stock in exchange. Honestly, not even knowing what that meant, but just feeling like it's something you're supposed to ask for. I think that was on a Friday. I came back on a Monday and she asked if I'd buy the entire company by January 1st. And after
Dang.
throwing up in the bathroom, I said yes. I was like, sure, why not? It's the scariest economic crisis I've ever been through. Let's mortgage my whole life for it. It'll be great. And I just said yes. And I had no idea really what that meant, but I knew I wouldn't get a chance like that again. God bless my now husband. We were just dating and I went home and I was like, I'm going to buy a company. So hope you're on board.
So get ready for
said-
this.
Yeah, I was like, there was no asking. He was like, okay. And that's what I did. And so we got lawyers. I figured out how to finance your entire life or mortgage your entire life. And I owned the company January 1st of 2021. And
How
it's
cool.
been a wild 5 years since then.
That's crazy.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Well, good for you for just not backing down and getting fearful and just
Yeah.
going for it. Way to go.
Mhm. Yeah. I joke that my biggest career moves always happen when the market's tanking. So I got into IT recruiting at the end of 2007.
Okay.
Decided to buy a
Sure.
company in the middle of COVID. So yeah.
Yeah. The both
Why
of the
not?
perfect times.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Green lights.
Oh, man. That's a great book, by the way.
Fantastic book.
Is
That's
it?
a great
Okay.
book. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
The Matthew McConaughey book. If you ever
Oh.
read it, make sure you do the audiobook. It's way better.
Totally.
So, yeah. On a long road
Totally.
trip sometime. It's great. So had you been in staffing before going to work for this firm as well? Or was that
Yeah.
your exposure to staffing there?
I had been at another agency for 3.5 years before coming
Okay.
to Latitude and done more high volume national recruiting there. Moved to Latitude because it was more boutique. Didn't understand it then, but what was really going on was this idea of a person first, job second approach to recruiting, where to your intro before, it really is about building a relationship. The job is secondary. Most of the people we talk to, or I talk to even at an executive level now, I'll never work with. And that's not the
Hmm.
point of the relationship.
Yeah. So I think maybe you're giving us a little bit of a hint here, but I know when I've talked to other business owners who had the chance to buy a business from somebody like you did, they basically have this moment where they realize, hey, after they get over the fear of it, they go, okay, here's the fingerprint I want to leave on this business. Here's how I'm going to make it my own. What did that look like for you? What was it that you wanted to do to make it different than it was before you owned it?
Yeah, mine probably came a little bit later. So if I think about what was going on in January of 2021, we had the largest tech hiring boom that this country had seen before what ended up being the dot-com bubble. So my first really 2 years were just surviving. And I grew up in sales. So I had no idea how to run a company. I knew that if I brought in more revenue than what we spent, that was probably a good idea. And that was it. Like, that's as far as it went. And thankfully, the accountant that worked with the company before stayed with me so we could like pay people. So I hadn't really had time to come up for air and think about what I wanted to do that was different until a couple of years in. But what that looked like for me was really this idea that if you do the right thing and you operate from a place of abundance and you truly believe that from a sales perspective, while also getting really clear about what success looks like and who your target market is, it should work. And so far it has. We've gone through a couple of different iterations of growth and had to learn a lot in that process. But Latitude had historically been run very much from a protection perspective. I wanted to know what happens if you invest and scale it versus it being a lifestyle company. And that was a pretty big shift for the organization.
That's really cool. I love the abundance mentality, Hillary. I think that's so critical. It's also, I mean, I don't know if that's something that is true about every business owner that came out of a sales background. Maybe it is. Maybe it's more prevalent there. I feel like it's definitely that way for me. I've come out of a sales background as well. As you know, my mantra has always been, I've never met a problem I can't sell my way out of.
Yeah.
So, which
And we're
is
still
kind of
here.
a fun, it's kind of fun, kind of scary, but it is what it is.
Well, and
I think you're right.
Well, and sometimes those lessons of like abundance and where that comes from these experiences that are, oh my gosh, like, how are we going to make this through? What are we going to do when we've come up against a wall, when we come up against a situation that seems difficult? And so some of that abundance mentality, it can start with an altruistic idea, but then it becomes a belief. It becomes something you operate from. And a lot of times that operating from comes from experiences. So I know every founder goes through those early days, right? Those early days of just scrapping, clawing and fighting for things, that kind of generates this idea of abundance. But what was the closest that you ever came to quitting, hanging it up, giving it up? Maybe it was right after COVID, but tell me at that time, because I know as founders, we sit here and we hear all of these success stories, but success stories are only from these challenging moments of deciding to keep pushing forward and pushing through difficult times. So what was one of those difficult times where you almost hung it up? And maybe tell us how that worked through for you.
Yeah. I think what I'll say to the abundance thing too is I think that if sales is a job for you, it's really easy to not think about it because you don't have to problem solve a lot over and over and over again. I think if you make sales your career, you are inevitably in enough situations where you're surprised you come out the other side or realize that we don't save lives or get to the other side of a mountain and you're like, oh, this can work. Or I innately won't know everything. So I think you're right. I think there is something to just doing it long enough to just see the reality of that versus it being something you believe because it sounds nice for the world.
Yes.
What I would say, there's been a few times where I'm like, I just want to go paint houses and be done at 5 p.m. I still have that feeling every now and again, if we're being honest. But usually for me, it's when I'm bored. And so
Interesting.
it's a culmination of like a gut punch, but then for whatever reason, I'm like, I'm just not as excited to get back up and do it again. And that usually has something to do with me being bored. So a really great example, this was maybe 8-9 years ago. I was account managing our largest national account. We had grown it 4 times over. I was so excited about it. It was an international brand. And I got so wrapped up in that excitement that I didn't think to look outside and the risk of having just that brand be that big inside of my book of business, inside of the companies. And a little bit of this was ego. I loved feeling like the pace car. And that brand decided that they wanted agencies that could also deliver offshore talent. We didn't and don't do that. So they cut us. And it was the single largest drop in revenue that Latitude had ever experienced. We had to lay people off. I felt very much responsible for it. And it was one of those moments where I was just like, and this was the first time I'd worked with a company that big. And it's one of the reasons I really like mid-market now, because my sponsors loved us. And all the feedback we were getting was that we were great, but higher up than that in the organization, it was a spreadsheet decision. And I didn't like not knowing that. Like the market can shift and stuff can blow up, but when my client tells me we're doing great and then they cut us, that was a really hard thing for me to reconcile. And at first I was like, I'm done, forget this. My boss at the time reminded me that we don't save lives and that I should have a drink and calm down. But I think with some more colorful commentary than that. But it was a really great example of me being like, I don't want to do this, taking a step back, decompressing, and then being like, or I need to make sure that I'm better focused in who I want to deliver to. And that's really what that usually leads to instead. And another really great one, this one is I don't know, this is a great story about me, but I was 3 years into owning Latitude. We were doing great. We spent part of the winter out in Palm Springs because Minnesota's winters are awful.
Awesome.
And
I thought you were going to say awesome,
awesomely
right?
cold and snowy and dark. It's great if you don't love sunlight. You should go there. The company was doing great. I was doing better than I had ever imagined. And I was so disengaged from the business. And I was like, why am I not excited about this? Why am I not? This is everything I've ever wanted. Why is this not the thing that I want to do? And if I'm not passionate about it, that's not fair to my team or this brand that I'm here to steward. Maybe I shouldn't do this anymore. And instead, again, after making it less dramatic and less about myself and taking a step back, it was like, oh, actually, I just need to grow. Like I need to go do something different inside of the organization and we've got to learn to scale it. And I try to catch it faster now, but it's typically one of those things. Like it's typically a thing where I want to back up because it's easier than refining what I'm supposed to actually be doing.
Dang. Yes. Okay.
That's
So
really
I
cool.
can relate because there have been, so I started a nonprofit. This would have been in 2009. And I can remember the day I was walking through Target and I saw an individual stocking the bread in the bread aisle. And I remember thinking to myself, I would love to have that job right there with zero responsibility, zero attachment to all of these things that you're kind of talking through, right? And I want to know through that process, there's this self-awareness that starts to surface. I mean, you've even started to talk about like, I noticed this about myself. I noticed that I started to do these things. Talk to me about what did you learn about yourself in those moments that were like when it was you and, just this point of scale because you wanted to scale, you wanted to grow, frustration, whatever the case may be. What did you learn about yourself in that moment when it came to the rubber hitting the road?
I'm still learning a lot about, what I would say is that and I think a lot of people experience this, when you grow up in a company, you have a lot of structure to tell you that you're on the right track, right? Like you've got sales goals, you've got a boss to tell you you're doing a good job, you get promoted. Like there's this whole infrastructure to be like, yep, this is what you should be doing. And what I have realized in owning a business is that it's just me. And this space where you've got to figure out how to trust yourself, you've got to figure out what your why is. And it can't be a shiny win, which I think for salespeople is so easy. And as the company's grown, I'm realizing that this compass or this idea of like what my North Star is has to constantly be something I'm testing. Because if it's just about a revenue number, or if it's just about a client list, it's too easy to hit or not. Like it's just, you're going to make the money or you're not. It's not a good measuring tool anymore. And that's a really big shift than what I grew up with. I grew up with quotas and I grew up with goals. And when you're the only one in the room and you've got an entire company looking at you saying, what next? You got to figure out kind of what, if you trust yourself and what that North Star is pretty fast.
Yeah,
Hillary,
yeah, go ahead, Craig.
Steve.
No, I was
Well,
just I was gonna respond to the thing that the connection that you made there with sales. Again, that sales background, which you and I share, Hillary, I totally relate to that, right? Because as a salesperson, the companies I had the most success with were the ones that had a good North Star that I could really buy into, right, and get excited about. But then when I moved and started my own business, I tended to focus a little bit too much on the numbers, right? Like, oh, I got to sell this many, I got this many clients, this much revenue, and that doesn't fulfill. It doesn't fulfill at the end of the day, like the North Star that you're talking about. So I appreciate you saying that. That's a good
It's a
reminder.
real bummer, though, isn't it? Because if it was just a number, it'd be a whole lot easier.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so
Sure.
good. Well, and I'm curious, Hillary, because I think what you're saying really resonates with business leaders, business owners. Who, just out of curiosity, who did you lean on that was outside of the business? And obviously they didn't have as much at stake or, didn't have as much exact insight into the business itself. But who did you lean on that could help give advice or just to be that extra support?
Yeah, I was a little late to that understanding that I would need external support. And a little bit of that was a shift for myself in realizing that I'm the best version of a leader when I don't know all the answers.
Hmm.
And I'm an even better version of that when I communicate to the people I'm leading that I don't know all the answers. And that's the
Wow,
point.
that's good.
That's great, man. That's awesome.
That's so good.
My first few years, though, I think this is maybe typical. When you get promoted up in sales organizations, you really just do more. So you go from being
Yeah.
like a pace car to managing salespeople, which are two totally different skill sets. But the idea is that you just know everything. And being able to say, I don't know, was such a shift in just how I operate as a person and such a relief that really helped me understand, okay, if I don't know everything, I need people that do. I have an awesome executive coach. I hired, and you need coaches in different stages. Like I was really nervous
Sure.
to speak about myself for years. So I hired an executive coach that just focuses on that. I now have a leadership team that operates inside of my company that I can lean on, that I have a COO who loves everything that I hate about operations, lights her on fire. I've never met a human in the world that loves spreadsheets more than this woman. And I love it because I don't. God bless you, because everybody needs a spreadsheet lover.
Yeah.
If you couldn't see, they were pointing at me as the lover of
Yes.
spreadsheets.
Yes.
But I think step one is figuring out like, what's your why? What do you really love to do? Keep yourself in that lane. And then it's just filling in other people that are experts. And it's the coolest thing ever because you get to learn from them. They're in this space that's just not yours. So I would say coaches, a therapist, A+ on therapy all day long. Should have had one of those when I was going through the buy of my company. That would have probably saved my husband a lot of heartburn. But I would say like, just reach out often and just start getting to know people. Because the other thing is that like when you're going through it, you think you're just this unicorn and that it's the most special thing in the
Sure.
world and that nobody's ever gone through this stuff. And it turns out like everybody has. So once
Yeah.
I started saying to people, I was like, hey, like I own this business and I don't really understand this piece. 90+% of people were like, oh yeah, I didn't either, but I do now. And here's who you should talk to.
That's so cool.
That's good.
the power of transparency, right?
Mhm.
And can I
So
just
good.
add too that like authenticity and transparency and like saying reality, as somebody, I think about Craig and Steve who are part of this business. When I hear those things, there is more trust on somebody who is following, right? There is more trust that I give there because I go, okay, if they're willing to say those things out loud, if they're willing to go, hey, listen, I don't know, but thank you for bringing that to my attention. We need to figure that out. There is inherent trust that gets built there. And when you're trying to build human organizations and you're trying to build human businesses, trust is the greatest thing that you can have, right? So absolutely love that. Spot on. Hillary, that's fantastic.
I couldn't help like when as
You
soon
did
as
the
Drew,
robot.
I know you're like human organization, but as soon as Drew was like, "Can I just say?" I was like this close to being like, "No," and just stepping in.
This is how he rolls, Hillary.
This is how the
what
shoving
we do
starts.
How terrible, right? Exactly.
It's my
Okay,
headlock.
let's exactly.
That's right.
Let's talk a little bit about IT recruitment, right? Because everybody, I'm sure, is hanging on the edge of their seat to learn about this. But I think there are some important things that you can unpack for us. And one of them, your website talks about partnership over placement. That is not typical. I don't know if you know this, Hillary, in the recruiting space. That is not typical recruiting language. What gives?
Yeah. I laugh a lot that the bar is so low in my industry that you just act like a normal person and people love you. I can't tell you how many candidates are like, "Oh my gosh, thanks for calling me and telling me I didn't get the job," which is wild that that's a differentiator. So step one, I guess, just be a regular person. But for us, if you think about this as a career versus a job, the average person
Yeah.
will move positions, and it's shortening up significantly over the last 25 years. It used to be on average between like 10 and 13 years people would make a move. Now it's every 3 to 6 years. So
Wow.
from a relationshiping perspective, if we get to know people first and then start talking about what they want to do now and do the same thing to our clients, they'll work with us over and over again. Selfishly, it saves time because you don't have to reach out to everybody as quickly as possible. And it's not just a numbers transactional game. And then on the other side of that, because we intentionally offer contract to hire, and direct hire, as opposed to just saying, buy this because we sell it. We can go to a client and say, what are we solving for? How do we look at your existing team? Maybe you don't need us the same way that you think you do. Maybe we can leverage some of your existing team and then put people in that make sense immediately, long-term. Not everybody you need might be long-term. Some might be. We can show up in a more authentic way, and then we keep people longer. Our clients stay with us longer. To me, it is the most obvious way to do business. And yet I am continually shocked by the amount of people that call us and the horror stories that they have. And then just how impressed they are because we scoped a role and told them that the job description they had doesn't exist in the market, but we can find them XYZ. Or we'll get to know a client really well and be like, you can hire us, or you've got this mid-level person over here that if you invest in, they'll stay with you longer. Go do that. Without fail, they come back to us. Without fail, they want to work with us. And
Yeah, that's
it's
good.
more authentic because you're also just getting to know real people.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's sales as service right there.
Right.
Perfect example.
100%.
Yep.
And one of the themes that keeps, at least that I've been listening as you've kind of been sharing, the theme that keeps surfacing, and I think specifically in this particular industry that you find yourself in is, this relentless honesty, right?
Mhm.
It's this, I'm going to keep showing up and being completely honest with where things are at, where we find ourselves, where the market's finding itself. I'm not going to just sit here and make you think that things are going to be bright and sunshiny, right? So through that process that just keeps surfacing through that, when did you start to realize that that actually starts to become your competitive advantage against all these other individuals that are out there, companies that are out there?
I think anecdotally, we understood it because I understood it when I was thinking about it. For a long time, I was our only salesperson when I bought the company. When we started to scale the business and hiring more salespeople and seeing them go out into their networks and sell the same idea of value, it just kept replicating. And I wish that there had been this aha moment, but I don't think this is specific to tech. But if you think back to the post-COVID hiring boom, you had people leaving jobs, accepting jobs and not starting. You had people leaving for $5 more a month after starting. And when you're commoditizing work to that extreme inside of the mid-market, where you're not an Amazon or a Google and you can't buy your talent, you run into this necessity of understanding your culture and your values to attract talent. And you've got to be authentic about that. So we started talking to our clients about that versus the hard skills. We saw higher retention. We didn't see as much of the insanity around salary asks because people were buying into the North Star, Steve, to your point earlier, the North Star of the organization. And that's when we really started to see the differentiator. We started to see our people stick. They stayed in companies. We could then use that to attract new talent to those organizations. I would really say COVID was when we saw it kind of take off. And it's not for every organization, but for the ones that value that, we've seen a lot of success.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love it. I always love stories that just reinforce the value of authenticity, because I think I feel like there's a race back to that now with all of the inundation of technology in so many ways. So I love that you're reinforcing that. I want to come back to you. You just briefly kind of said, I used to do all the sales. And I remember when our first conversation, we had that conversation and you said, I think I remember that you said at the end of 24, you decided, hey, I need to step out of that sales seat and start empowering others to do that. What were the signs that were happening either, maybe for you personally, but also within the business that led you to that conclusion that it was time for you to step out of something that you obviously are good at and that you loved?
Organizationally, I was bottlenecking everything. I had made the
Mm.
mistake of assuming all of the things I hate doing, so does everybody else. It turns out that's not true. And I was okay at everything, but not really great. That then led me to not feel super successful and super engaged. And at a moment where I should have been like, oh, we just got this sale. Instead, I was like, I need to go redline this contract. I need to go onboard that person. I need to go figure out our business insurance, all these other things that were adding all this static. And because I was sort of at the top of this funnel, we weren't growing. And so it became very clear that I was like, okay, we've got to add more people into this. I need people that sell differently than me, that are not just me's, because that's not fun and also not real, and our brand's not going to diversify. So it became a little bit of the operational impact also then directly connected to just my emotional feeling about it, and that I can't effectively scale a business if nothing can move forward without me. It feels really good for like a minute. You feel super special, and then you just feel tired all the time.
Wow.
Man.
Yeah.
That's so good. Yeah, so true. We obviously, in the work that we do at Alteza, we talk to a lot of founders who are hesitant to do this, hesitant to step out. And, they're talking to us, so they're obviously thinking about it, but there's a lot of hesitation there. What advice would you give them to help them make that change that you did?
I think I would say that nobody is going to sell like you. It's probably why you built the brand. So just get right with it. There is not another version of you out there. So stop trying to make it that way. Also, this goes back to this idea that the point isn't that I know the answers. The point is that I build the room. And if you can figure out those core values, and if you can figure out the value proposition, and those are in alignment with the salespeople you're hiring, then not only are you growing, because their network is going to grow and they're going to bring in new things and new opportunity, but it then has given me space to elevate the style of selling I do. So I still sell, but now I'm at an executive sponsorship level. Now I'm speaking at something and branding the company and meeting somebody that might become a client. So it's just a different kind of selling. And in order to do that really well, you've got to let some of this stuff go. And at some point, it probably doesn't motivate you the same way it used to. So get somebody in that seat that is pumped to be in that world, because it's going to add energy to the entire team versus it just being a to-do.
That's good. Now, Hillary, for everybody that's listening to this, they're maybe driving their car, they're now pulling over to the side of the road so they can write this down. Could you say that line again? I don't have to know everything. Because they're getting out their pen, their paper, they're writing it down right now. I don't have to know everything.
You do not have to know everything. And I would argue you will not grow if you have to know everything. It's impossible. If the growth of my company is dependent on what is inside of my head, and there's no one else coming in with new ideas, it is completely illogical to think that we will keep growing, because I'm not growing. So it can't be this like brain space down thing. And it only makes sense when you really think through it, because I didn't believe any of that for the longest time. And it's also like borders, I think, on being a little narcissistic, where it's like, I must know everything because I'm so amazing that the only possible person that can like project this down is me, is nuts.
Well, the second part that you said that I think is just like the bomb dropping, right, is I just have to have the right people in the room. Holy cow. Like that alone, I don't have to know everything. I just have to have the right people in the room. That is more than a nugget. And you just like crystallized it in a sentence, right?
That's a who, not how.
Holy cow.
Statement, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. So good.
That's what tequila and soda on a Thursday afternoon does for you.
Woo!
Yes!
Let's go.
Yes!
There's the secret to good business leadership right there. Tequila and soda on Thursday afternoon.
If you pulled off and you wrote that down, you can get back on the road now.
No, that's so good. I love too that you said you made a statement about other people are not going to sell like me, and you said that as a positive That's a
Yes.
positive thing. A lot of times founders see that as a negative thing. So I'm so glad you reframed that. That's so important. So, yeah.
It's such an opportunity. We've hired salespeople that have such a unique approach that I get to learn from them, that know all kinds of people I don't know. It's such like it gives me so much excitement to then get to go support them and sell inside of that space with them. It's so much more, there's so much more enjoyment. And I feel so much more engaged having stepped out of that box.
Yeah, that's so cool. I love it, man. I love that you're saying that, because we don't get to talk to a lot of founders who came out of the sales seat who can speak to it quite as powerfully as you are there. So that's awesome, Hillary. So I think I heard this correctly earlier. You mentioned something about a 90% consultant retention rate. Did I
Mm-hmm.
remember that
Mm-hmm.
accurately? Which
Yep.
is insane to me.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Good job. Congratulations. So
Yeah.
talk to us about what can we learn from you about how to maintain human touch while we're scaling, because clearly you've done that.
So we have an entire arm of the business called consultant care. So you're not done with us when you get placed. And that goes back to this living the value of a relationship that's long term. So we're constantly talking to our people. Is this what you thought it would be? Client, here's some feedback for you. How do we make sure everybody's aligned? And because they were never talking to us about one job, they were talking about their career. We get a lot more transparency when people do want to leave. I'm way more open to talking to us about that because they see us as a long-term partner. And then our clients on the other side are coming to us earlier and saying, hey, so-and-so isn't showing up the way that we would like them to. Can you coach them? So we're able to get in front of it so much faster and get to, most of the time, people just don't know. Right? Like you're two people and teams coming together. You probably haven't met in person because so much of our work is virtual, that a
Yeah.
lot of times it's just taking the time to get people on the same page. But in staffing, there's this tendency that the deal is done when the person starts. Like that's your finish line. For
Yeah.
us, it's a constant loop. It just depends on where you are in that cycle for us. It could be that you are a prospect. It could be that you are a consultant. It could be that you are a former consultant and now a hiring manager. But you stay with us continually. And then back to that transparency, we're really, really honest about what works for a client. Because as long as our client knows who they are, we can attract the right personality to them, as
Okay.
opposed to let's just take the rec and you need all of these hard skills, we'll go find it. All of our intakes are about tell me about your team. Tell me about who's successful in your team. Tell me about who's struggled in your team. When you interview people, how often are they sticking? So that way we're getting to some of these root cause issues before we ever put somebody on the team.
Wow.
That's really
I
good.
love
I
that.
love the consultant care. We need to make a note of that, boys.
I know.
That's good
I know.
stuff.
I'm learning a lot as she's
I
talking,
know.
for sure.
Well, that's what I love about doing a podcast is it's like we're getting some free coaching right here, y'all.
So
Yeah,
true.
well, spoiler, if
Sucker.
you do all those things, it's all self-serving because if you do all of those things, you get access into your clients. You get to
Yeah.
know all the stuff that they're great at and all the stuff that they're not. And so it
Yeah, that's
feeds your
good.
own sales cycle.
Yeah,
That's so
that's
good.
so good. Love that. I feel like you've already kind of touched on this in roundabout ways, but if you were to say, think about the biggest mistakes that you see founders or business owners make as they're scaling hiring, what's the one? What's like the big one that you're like, just don't do this. Please stop.
I think it's that people don't really understand what they want their business to be.
Okay.
I think that there's this idea that we have that it's like you're growing or you're dying and you have to be this like gigantic company or you have to I decided I didn't want a lifestyle company because I was curious about what it means to build a bigger sandbox. It had nothing to do with making more money. I mean, I very much enjoy making money and I happen to be very expensive. So it's good that we are. But I knew going into that meant I had to change and grow the most because I was running a lifestyle business. And so
Wow.
I went into it knowing this is going to be pretty uncomfortable and I'm going to probably have to do the most amount of work. But I think a lot of times I see founders and they're like, I want to be this thing or this idea that is usually not their own. It's been put on them as the goal that we should all want. Like everybody wants to be Steve Jobs or like fill in the blank,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
But if you can figure out your why and what you actually want out of it, like what success looks like for you, I think building to that is a lot easier. And then for me, it made sense that I had to get out of the way, as opposed to going in saying, I want to be big because I want to make a ton of money and I want to be huge. And then being like, Now I have to change.
Wow. That's good.
So you've kind of talked around, we've kind of talked around this, and there's this phrase that has become really kind of popular over the last 5 years, and it's this term called ghosting. And, being in the recruiting world, talking to people constantly, there is this ghosting effect that begins to take place, right? You start the conversation, and all of a sudden it disappears. The conversation just abruptly ends. Talk us through really quick this no ghosting. What does it actually mean in practice for you? And what does that look like for you guys?
Ghosting, I think, is such a business loss that requires so little work to avoid. It is shocking to me the damage it can do, and it takes about 2 seconds to avoid it. So for us, there will never be a conversation that doesn't have a next step. That next step could be, we're going to send you an email if we see something open. That next step could be, you have an interview and we're going to give you feedback. That next step could be from a client that says, I don't need anything right now. Great, we're going to touch base in 6 months. Whatever it is, it's about getting really clear about what you have the capacity to do. I think that's a really big deal. I actually choose to believe most people don't intentionally ghost people because they want to be jerks. That doesn't make sense. I think it's people signing up for more than they have the capacity to do.
So good.
So getting really clear around, hey, I'm going to send you an email if I have something, but reach out to me if you want to connect, is still a touch point. It's still authentic, but it's not saying we're going to have an hour-long conversation every other week. That's not realistic.
Yeah.
This idea that people are applying to jobs and they are interviewing with companies like huge brands and they hear nothing at a human level is awful. It doesn't feel good on any level. It's also completely avoidable. Get a mass email through your CRM that sends a note. Like, this is not difficult to do, but I think it's because people don't have the time to really think through it. But it is shocking to me that the differentiate is literally that we're just going to do what we say. That's it. Like, you're welcome.
Yes.
Wow.
It's amazing. Yeah. It's just like, it's like just showing up, right? It's like showing up.
Mm-hmm.
Show up. You're ahead of 90% of the freaking people in the workforce. If you just show up and do your damn job and do what you say you're going to do. That's another one that people have.
And be okay saying, I can't help you.
Yeah,
all the time. We'll have clients that come to us and they'll ask for something that is not in our lane. And I am the first to say, this isn't us, but I know somebody over here. I'll connect you with them. Because every single person you ghost is a future client, a future candidate, a future friend, a future fill in the blank type of person in your world. And it takes 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
That's so good.
Hillary, before we wrap with our toast, and before we go back to pretending that recruiting isn't really a sales sport, leave the founders that are listening or the business leaders that are listening with one thing that if they actually started to do it tomorrow, it would change the way they think about hiring, selling, or just being honest with people. What is it?
I would say it is very worthwhile to go through an exercise to understand what your core values are and do it in a way where it is not the version of you that wished existed, but who you actually are. And every single thing you do that you vet through that you like should line up. So that should be your first indicator that you're on the right track. And use them. Use them in how you attract people on your team. Use them on how you attract the clients that you work with. Because it's the easiest way to find synergy because they look at things through a similar lens. But you've got to figure out what those are, and then you got to get real diligent about defining them so that people know what you're talking about. My core values inside of the business are exactly how I operate outside of the business. It's just who I am. And I tell my team, if these are not your core values, I'm going to drive you crazy. Every client that we've broken up with has been because we don't value the same thing. Every person that's never worked on my team is because I didn't do enough work to explain the core values and make sure that there was alignment there. It's not fair to the people you work with. It's not fair to the people that you engage with. And it's okay. Not everybody's going to like you, and they shouldn't. But if you get really clear on who does and why, everybody in your circle clicks together so much more seamlessly.
That's so good. I feel like this was a missed opportunity because we could have unpacked that a little bit more. But what is one core value that you have that stands out to you to be a part of?
Engage fully. Like, engage fully is, we have 4 core values. That one, I will move the entire world around if I feel like someone is engaged with me, and I will engage with them. As soon as I feel like I'm walking up a hill by myself, I lose interest, and I'm not great at showing up. I know that about myself, so I need to have people I work with that like
That
to
are
engage
engaged
fully. Yes.
Yeah, that's
And
good.
once I figured
That's
that
good.
out, there's nothing wrong with any of the people that just have different core values, but it's without fail the reason that there's been a rub, and it never goes away. It just gets more defined. Core values gives you language around why.
So great. That's so good. Okay, so where can people find you? How can they connect with you?
LinkedIn, because I'm like the only millennial that doesn't do any other social media. So LinkedIn, latitude-group.com has everything. I'm the only Hillary Spreizer, so that's helpful. But that's our company website. We are all over LinkedIn because that's our genres. And just real quick callback to what you said, recruiting is 100% selling. So anybody that tells you that it's not, it's selling.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's why I said we go back pretending that it's not a sales
Yes.
sport, right?
Yeah. Oh, we're professional matchmaking, but you still got to sell it.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, as you know, we end every episode with a toast. And Drew, I get to see the magic in person this week.
Here we go. Just
No
be
pressure,
ready.
Drew.
You're up. You're up.
Wait, but can you see any sort of chat GPT, or is this just
Not at the
you're
moment.
just doing this as you go? Okay.
Not at the moment.
Hillary,
Catchy.
this is coming from the depths of my soul with a little bit of chat involved here. Just kidding. Here's what we're going to do. Everybody put your glasses up. And I want to say here is to all of us building something that lasts, right? Not on hype, but on honest conversation, on authenticity, real relationships, and doing what you say you're going to do. Hillary, here's to you for showing that honesty isn't a weakness in business, but it's actually the real advantage that sets us apart from everybody else in what it is that we do. Cheers to that.
Cheers to that.
Well
Clink.
done. As
Thank you.
always, Drew is the master.
Drew, you are the sensei when it comes to the toasts. But
I bet
And
you
I've got
crush
somebody
it
in
at
person to see it.
weddings.
yeah.
Right?
I bet you.
Listen.
Yeah.
You may or may not want to put me in front of a bunch of people with a glass and a drink in my hand and just get the music cranking. It could be something that's there. You know what I'm saying?
I love it. This is good to know. You might get a call for a future Latitude functions. We may need to
Corporate.
There we go.
Corporate
zoom
function.
you
Exactly.
in for that.
He used to
Yeah.
hype you.
Guys, this has been so great, and these topics are so important, and I really appreciate
Yeah.
you creating space for them.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Well, and to everybody listening, that's the stuff right there. That's why you listen to this podcast. I mean, Hillary just handed you the cheat code to better hiring, and it costs you nothing but honesty. The Latitude Group, 24 years of proof that doing business the right way works. With new ownership, by the way, in the last 5 years. Hillary, glasses raised to you. Thank you for being here. Folks, if you're tired of the noise in recruiting, go check them out. Connect with her on LinkedIn. This has been Whiskey is for Closers. We'll be back next time with another founder who's definitely figured it all out. Maybe not. Until then, close like Hillary would with honesty and respect and maybe a little bit of sass. Whoop, whoop. Cheers.
Whoop, whoop. Let's go.
Cheers. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Hillary.